Anotherway, Erasmus Plus Program, Cooperation for Innovation and the Exchange of Good Practices, KA205, Strategic Partnership for Europe, funded by EU, number 2019-2-IT 03-KA205-016466. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus Program of the European Union. Mediterranea, Associazione per lo sviluppo locale. This work is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. To view a copy of this license, visit http://creativecommons.org or send a letter to Creative Commons, P.O. Box 1866, Mountain View, CA 94042, USA. Per altra via. Anotherway. An original method by Francesco Piccolo. Module 3. Through. Lessons 7 and 8. The film.
Hace 17 años hice este mismo trayecto, pero al revés, de Barcelona a Madrid. También venía huyendo, pero no estaba sola. Traía a Esteban dentro de mí. Entonces huía de su padre. Y ahora voy en su busca.
¿Seguimos por aquí?
Sí, siga.
In order to deal with these forms of art, filmic and photographic, which are united by the film, I chose to start from a clip of Pedro Almodóvar's 1999 film Todo sobre mi madre. I apologize to the blind in class for the absence of audio commentary on the clips in this lesson, but I was unable to find accessible versions of the films mentioned. What did we see? Let's analyze it as if it were a picture. After all, there is a scene there too, but it is as if we saw only one frame, and not all the action. A woman is on a train car. We see her in the foreground. She says that she made that journey in the opposite direction years before, when she was pregnant with her child. Now she is on her way back to meet the father of her child. Then the room shows us a long tunnel and then flies up to shows us the destination of the train and the protagonist. We don't see her getting off the train, but she is sitting in a taxi, where the alternation of subjective and objective shoots presents us, through details of the symbolic monuments, the city where we are, Barcelona. The director takes us subjectively to see what the woman is seeing. We understand that she is looking for someone, but who? Then a panoramic view from above shows us the vortex shape within which she, and we with her, are entering. They are images in sequence, and yet they constitute a narrative. The swaying of the shot, this continuous turning of the car, the detail of the protagonist's gaze, suggest that her return is tiring. The facade of the Sagrada Familia, deformed by the rain on the window, suggests that everything she sees is deformed by her inner state, by her emotions. As we did for paintings, let's ask ourselves what part of the story we are seeing. This scene is part of what wider story? Those who have seen the film already know, and I don't want to spoil the surprise for those who want to see it. In this lesson, I am interested in communicating that the action of a director or a professional photographer is not so different from that of a painter or a sculptor. They change the material they use, and above all, the ease with which their work can be appreciated by several people at the same time, each in their own place. We, in fact, always see the original of a film or a photo, because the copy does not exist, artistically I mean, because legally the issue is that the copy is not authorized, not that the quality is inferior. Like a novel, or a poem, or why not a song, the copies, if authorized, are the work itself. Let us return, however, to the subject matter of which a film is made. You will have noticed that I have spoken of foreground, sequence, view from above, subjective and objective view. These are technical terms, as for painting to say oil on canvas or fresco or mosaic. But in the film, it's a bit more complex, because in the technical and material ones, they coincide. You can't make a fresco with mosaic tiles or an oil with acrylic colors, while in the film you use the same material, the film, or the digital support even. What do we see then? What do we touch? Creativity is the most comprehensive answer to give. For example, if we wanted to see the scene I proposed at the beginning, but without audio, would it have the same effect? How much does Ismael Los Tallabon's melancholy affect us viewers? I, for example, had no idea what the lyrics of the song said. So I looked it up, and if the English translation is correct, it looks very fitting compared to the scene in the film. Tayabon, we are going to Tayabon. Abdul Jabbar is an angel coming from the skies to your soul. He's going to ask you, did you pray? He's going to ask you, did you fast? He's coming to your soul. He's going to ask you, did you pray? Did you fast? Surely, the protagonist is traveling. She is wanderer. She is looking for someone, and memories overwhelm her. We feel her estrangement from the context of Barcelona, which in a past life belonged to her. If we were at a film course, it would make sense to ask if the song Tayabon is diegetic, is part of the action, and can be heard by the characters, rather than being just for the people watching to hear. Or non-diegetic, is played over the action for the people watching to hear, rather than being part of the action and heard by the characters. It's non-diegetic, of course, but I think it's more useful in this context to ask if this music has done its job, if it has added meaning and emotions to the scene, so much that if we lower the volume, we would lose its meaning. I'll give another example to better explain myself. Alessandro Cecchi, in his article Diegetic versus Non-Diegetic, a reconsideration of the conceptual opposition of 2010, states, "It is only in the context of audiovisual narration that the audio can express all its aesthetic and constructive potential. In the most famous scene of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, 1960. The murder, an analytical appraisal, should consider not the represented contents, but primarily the construction of the audiovisual sequence in the sense of an on-screen narration in which Bernard Herrmann's music plays its full part. This music is clearly non-diegetic with respect to the diegetic sounds. If the sequence is deprived of audio, we immediately see all the diegetic insufficiency of the images with respect to the audiovisual impact of the complete sequence. The piercing E flat in the violins, which in the space of 8 bars organizes itself into a cluster involving all the strings on the subsequent 3 degrees of the chromatic scale spread over 4 octaves, is perfectly synchronized with the killer's hand pulling aside the curtain. It is precisely the metallic grating sound heard just before as the victim pulled the curtain to, which suggests the musical timbre. The clusters in the following 8 bars made all the more dissonant by rapid rising glissandi in all the instruments, proved to be not only narratively but also diegetically more convincing than the representation of the stabbing, an abstract sequence stripped of the potential violence of the blows. In a sense, this has been absorbed by the non-diegetic music, even though there is no strict synchronization. The position of the music with respect to diegesis is perfectly clear, but its function does not stop here. It actually determines the audiovision in its representative capacity, and thus exerts an influence on the very possibility of inferring a diegesis, even though, of course, there are other elements which collaborate in equal measure. The woman's screams, the noise of running water, the metallic rasp of the curtain, and the slump of the moribund body. The very sense of the diegetic sounds is reconfigured in the interaction with the non-diegetic music. Thus, it is perfectly evident that in terms of narrative, the diegetic-non-diegetic distinction has its function, which is quite marginal with respect to the sequence in question. We experience the threshold only in the limited degree to which we perceive its secondary status in terms of the aesthetic experience of the film, which is in fact our experience of the audiovision.
Blood!
But a film does not only consist of directing and music. It is also made by actors, script writers, set designers, lighting and filming technicians. More professionalism contributes to creating this work of art. Very often, we attribute the merit of the entire work to the director alone. But if we look at the film awards, the Oscar for example, we see that the individual professionalism is rewarded as well as the film. The reason why I stress this is that the director's creativity certainly counts and is worth it. But a film is a collective work, and this is of greater interest to us at Peralta Via Another Way. A tour created by us is, in fact, a collective work that uses already existing material, already existing works of art, to make a new, original product. Is it therefore a work of art? I don't think so. But what I'm saying about making a film is the best metaphor I could find to explain that in a Peralta Via Another Way itinerary, everyone puts their skills and creativity. So, for those who were wondering what kind of strange tour I wanted to organize through a film, this is the answer. The film is not the medium, but the model of the tour. But it could happen that there is a photographic exhibition or an artistic installation with images. So, it makes sense to ask, is photography an art? But before we ask ourselves, what is a photograph? Technically, the Collins Dictionary defines as photography the process of recording images on sensitized material by the action of light, X-rays, etc., and the chemical processing of this material to produce a print, slide, or sign film. For me, instead, these words of an Italian song are the most appropriate definition of its function. It would be much easier to meet again in relaxed thoughts as if we were still suspended in the moment when it could happen. La descrizione di un attimo di Romancino, Virgin Records, 2000. A photograph is a portion of time, the eternal suspension of the moment, which remains imprinted on an external medium, paper or file, rather than reverberating in our brain circuits as memory of the moment. The power of the photographic act is clear from its appearance in the late 1800s. It is clear that the machine captures the image. It does not describe it, translate it as the painter does. It retains it in its dark shutter and returns it on film or files in deferred time, darkroom, print, etc., or very briefly, as in the case of our smartphones. Photography is memory, but it is memory of appearance. John Berger, famous art critic, novelist, painter, and poet, asks himself, what was there instead of photography before the invention of the camera? The most obvious answer is engraving, drawing, painting. The most enlightening answer would be memory. What photographs do out there in space was previously done by thought. The camera saves a series of appearances from an otherwise inevitable succession of further appearances. It keeps them unaltered. Before the invention of the camera, there was nothing that could perform such a function except the faculty of memory in the mind's eye. What we see, or it would be more correct to say we look at, is an instant, captured and held for us. But we are distant from that event, not only temporally, but in all probability also culturally and geographically. In this lies the ambiguity of photography. Its similarity to reality leads us to think that there is no mediation between the author of the shot, the captured instant, and us who access it later. It leads us to think that that is reality, and in part it really is. The rest, it's art. The technical expedients, framing, composition, exposure, post-production, are the chisels and brushes of the photographer, who, if we want to remain in the metaphor of memory, produces for us an engram that must therefore be read, interpreted as such. When in fact this trace, that is the photo, is deposited through our eyes in our personal memory, it activates a series of our memories. It is linked to our emotions. It is the evocative power of photography. Usually, a photograph, when it is exposed, has a title and other information that helps us contextualize it. The caption suggests the story of which we see only a page, or, to paraphrase Berger, the quotation. I would like to highlight how I, like the author quoted, am using categories from one art form to comment on another. I use words from literature, but I am talking about photography. This is because at the conclusion of our through module, it is now clear that the distinction between different art forms is only useful on a descriptive and study level, while in practice, the boundaries, if they exist, are much more blurred. As an example of what I say, I quote a work by Wim Wenders, a German filmmaker, playwright, author, and photographer. This image, Entrance, 1983, was originally taken in Houston, Texas, while the artist was preparing for his film Paris, Texas. The only clear lines in this photo are the vertical elements, the traffic light poles, which, like a frame, include the human figure in the middle, between the two, but below and in the middle of the entrance sign. The dominant colors are black and white, but they are elusive and closed in the curved lines of the building and the street. The resulting sensation is man's hesitation with respect to his actions. Wenders composes this image like a photo, but uses it in the sequence of a film. Wim Wenders sees architecture as a language and an art. Wim Wenders sees architecture as a language and an art, on a par with painting. Speaking of Hooper, a great American painter, he says, "Butte was once a grand city. To me, that city is like one big stage for Edward Hooper. You could put your camera anywhere, and you felt you were looking at his paintings." Below, a comparison of a painting by Hooper and a film by Wenders. On the left, we can see Summertime, Edward Hooper, 1943. On the right, we can see a scene from Two or Three Things I Know About Edward Hooper by Wim Wenders. Every form of art, therefore, does nothing but tell in a universal language, that of beauty, the experiences, the backgrounds, the emotions of those who create a work, interpreting their own era, but projecting themselves through their work into the future. We are that future. It is our present. In this lesson, the images are used for educational purposes only, and for the most part are original. Those for which it has been possible to identify the source are mentioned in the image itself. For the others, the author remains available to give credit to any rights holders who request it, using the following address: peraltravia@gmail.com.